So Harry Hardwick's going to be stepping up on short notice to take on Kaue Fernandes this weekend at UFC Paris. Harry Hardwick is the current, well, I guess maybe former Cage Warriors Featherweight champion, who is stepping up upper weight class to fight Kaue Fernandes in place of Faraz Ziam, who pulled out due to his grandmother passing. The reason I'm making this video is because I've been a fan of Harry Hardwick for a while. I think he's a very exciting fighter, especially him and his brother, who make really good content on TikTok. They've got a little bit of that on-brand, fighter autism that boosts performances. You can see that in a little bit of their tier list, their obsession with Palmos, but most importantly, their obsession with kickboxing, Muay Thai, and just the sport in general, which you see a lot in their breakdowns of fighters that they post online. So, I think this has been, honestly, a great example of asking you shall receive. Harry Hardwick has documented his journey in trying to obtain a short notice UFC fight. He was there, he'd made the flight from England, Middlesbrough, England, to Abu Dhabi for Whittaker RDR in order to seek perhaps an Aaron Pico or Movsar Evloev fight. But it was more importantly to make a connection to the UFC, and it's been absolutely amazing that that's actually been able to pay off for him. I think this fight is incredibly fun, and I'm going to break it down. Now, the first thing I want to point out is there's no way Kaue Fernandes is 5'9". If you watch his LFA stats, he's 6 foot, which makes a lot more sense. He was pretty much the same height as Gurm Kudus in that fight, and Gurm's like 5'11", according to UFC stats, but to be honest, I really doubt that fucking trustworthy anyway. So, that's an important thing to notice. He's 6 foot, he's taller than Harry Hardwick. And that's a big caveat, because Kaue Fernandes fights like a long fighter. How does Kaue Fernandes fight? Wide base, big leg kicks. He fights off mainly 4 weapons, primarily 2. His massive right leg kick and his whippy fast lead head kick. And then he will throw a jab or right hand, once in a while. But he's a guy who needs to keep range and will just blast damage at you. But not at an incredibly fast pace. Not at a pace where he will look to actually knock you out TKO. Maybe he'll get a leg kick TKO, but he doesn't really evolve past his kicks. And that's an important thing to talk about, because Harry Hardwick is a pressure fighter. This guy, look, don't make a clear-cut comparison, but he fights like JDM. He really does. He wants to get you against the fence, and he will throw amazing combinations at you. But in saying that, he kind of throws in a way like Holloway, where it's short, efficient, and more volume as opposed to big power shots, which JDM kind of does. He does kind of load up a little bit. Right? He always in combinations, really fast. I think the story of the fight really comes down to how can Harry Hardwick neutralize Kaue Fernandes' leg kicks. And we're going to look at this. So, his most recent fight was against Javier Garcia, a grappler. And in that fight, he really didn't have to contend too much with leg kicks. Garcia threw a couple, and his defense was to check them or to just get out of the way. But the actual fight I'm interested about is in that Quenny Lopez fight. Quenny Lopez was a shorter, really a brawler, big right meaty hooks, massive fucking power, looking to land and knock you out pretty much as soon as possible. In that fight, Harry Hardwick had to deal with a lot of leg kicks. And he dealt with them in 3 ways. Some of them not so much successful. One way was the Muay Thai catch. You see him do that quite a bit. He does that against any front body kicks, any middle or leg kicks. He will catch and then throw. A little bit like that Taiwan Chai Super Bond knockout. Right? He looks to do that. He did that against Quenny Lopez, dropped him, landed a flush hook, but I will say he did fail a couple times early in that fight. And he ate a lot of damage as a result of that. The next thing he'll do is he'll try and do like this Japanese, it's like K1, high level kickboxing shit where they'll teep the hip as you throw. So you kind of go off balance, but I'm gonna be dead ass honest, he ain't fast enough to do that shit. So I really hope he doesn't do that within this fight. the last thing he does is he'll do a check, he'll do a cross check, he'll just run out the way. But in saying that, because he's so willing to throw hands, he's definitely, the possibility is there for him to just eat one and close distance with it. And you see a lot of people do this against, well, okay, maybe not a lot, but you see people do this against Kaue Fernandes, where they will eat the leg kick and just look to throw a left overhand or right overhand at him. I think that will be something that Harry Hardwick may be looking to do. When we talk about Harry Hardwick's offense, it all lies in creating exchanges, working in that short range where you can hit him and he can immediately hit you back. We're not talking only kicking range. We're talking punching, kicking, anything range. Really, really similar to how, I guess, the range Ilya likes to work at, right? And you see a lot more in striking battles where they're kind of just at each other. So the way he uses this, I guess, fundamentally works off his jab. It's a real fast, real nice, it's just a nice jab. His defense as part of that jab kind of just relies on his ability to roll and just get out of the way of his opponent's shots before they can hit him. He's got real fast footwork, moving backwards. But I'm going to be honest, it's a little bit scary. Especially because he's fighting upper weight class and this guy who's so much longer. You don't always want to see that, chin tucked. There's been countless times where it's been struck to the chest, where it's like if the opponent was just a little bit quicker or just a little bit longer, it would land flush and that'd be a little bit dangerous. But he does have a pretty decent chin. He's real good at cage cutting, which is something that Guram couldn't do against Kaue Fernandes, and I think that's really telling because Guram was able to pressure Kaue in the third round after he was beat the fuck up. If you can do this to Kaue in the third round, right, and if you can cut him off so he can't go lateral and circle, right, he has real problems. And we saw this when he fought Sardinia. Oh fuck, I forgot his first name. We saw this Luan Sardinia, right? I think it was in the third round where he was put against the fence and Sardinia started throwing and success was just there. Now let's talk about Kaue Fernandes. This is a guy that fights karate stance, very bladed, looking for just the kicks and just long right hands down the pipe. In recent fights, he's gotten better with combinations. We saw in that Guram fight, he didn't really land any successful, but he was throwing a lot of uppercut left hook combinations with that angle off, right hand, walk him into a right hand, uppercut left hook, which is, a good improvement from his previous game because he doesn't have that many weapons with his hands, to be honest. One thing that we don't talk about is that he is a BJJ black belt. Whatever merit you want to put into that, I honestly think titles like that probably should not be, evaluated as high as people used to. But it is something to consider, especially when you watch that Mark Jacassi fight, where he was putting up omoplatas, putting up armbar threats, in order to escape from bottom, right? But it also just shows that he's quite comfortable on bottom. But that's a problem against Harry Hardwick. You cannot be comfortable on bottom against Harry Hardwick because the guy is looking to punish you and land damage. He's real slick on the back. I honestly think Harry could finish the fight if he gets Kaue on the back. On his back, hooks in, body triangle, looking for that rear naked or just looking to land damage. But Kaue is a guy that tends to just get up. He will settle, he'll get his breath back, he will take a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then he will just chuck up an omoplata, or he will chuck up, or he will just be able to shrimp and get his knees under and then push off. I don't think this fight's going to go to the ground. Kaue is a guy that likes to fight on the feet. We saw this when he fought Guram. He hurt him, he dropped him, but he just let him stand back up because he likes to beat people up from the feet. I honestly think, after watching all this fucking tape on Kaue, is that the guy has a slightly sketchy gas tank. I know he, held up against Mark. I know he held up against Guram, but these weren't like fights at the pace of Harry Hardwick. Look, if you watch Harry Hardwick's fight against Quenny Lopez, you watch his fight against Orlando Wilson Print, and there's a fight before that against a Brazilian who was, I think, like 1 or 2 pro fights in. It was like 5-2 Brazilian. You watch the pace that he was fighting at, his relative defensive awareness, because if you're throwing that, you're going to get caught, right? But his ability to roll with the shots and just, in general, evade them and not get hit clean, whilst putting in massive like combos, massive straight shots, big body shots. Body shots is such an important weapon that him and his brother George uses. That's absolutely fucking phenomenal. I think he's gonna break Kaue down with this. Right? His body shots, big body hooks, straight right hands to the body, and also whilst he doesn't use it as much as his brother does, that front teeth, the Mai Geri to the midsection, mate, that is. I think that's gonna be a game changer in this fight. Now, look, overall, I've waffled a lot. I'm gonna be honest, this wasn't really that composed, and I really should have been. I apologize, but I think overall, this is a kill or be killed fight style, right? At least if it, Kaue doesn't go to the ground and show that he's better than Hardwick on the ground. It's hard to judge this because Hardwick's only fought in Cage Warriors. He hasn't fought a lightweight, this upper weight class. He hasn't fought a guy who's fought international, not international, a guy who's fought high level international, the UFC level competition multiple times. I don't know if this is going to go to the ground, but Kaue likes to stand on the feet. Hardwick likes to stand on the feet, and if it does go on the feet, it's kill or be killed, and I favor Hardwick style. I think he's going to be able to, get past the range, eat some kicks to land some damage, and just pressure Kaue to the fence, and from the fence, he's just going to cut him off and work damage. A bit like Emmett Topuria. A bit like JDM does. Overall, I favor Hardwick style. I think this is a style that's harder to adjust to within 5-6 days notice than Kaue style, who really just has the threat of that right kick and that lead head kick off the break. Right. There's a couple caveats for Hardwick though. UFC jitters. We see a lot of people debut and not perform like they are projected to. I know I'm talking about Bellator fighters, and we can't really evaluate how good they are based off their competition, but it does still stand, right? This is something that Harry's been working for ages, and who the fuck knows how he's gonna feel when he steps in there on Saturday, Sunday night, depending on where you're watching. This is also upper weight class, and it's not the weight, right? I know Harry's been fit, I know Harry's been looking for this, but it's really the length. Harry hasn't really fought an opponent that's been longer than him. He tends to be the longer fighter down at featherweight, and we'll see if he is able to cross that range of Kaue's to start landing that jab, to start pressuring him back with that jab, the lead right hands, being able to work off the jab to land those body shots. I think this is something that really we will be able to, with decent confidence, say a minute into the fight. And also, lastly, this is a short notice fight. He hasn't fully prepped for this opponent. I don't think he was expecting this opponent. I know he was calling. I think if he heard Fares, I literally saw that when he saw Fares ZM out, he called for it. But I really don't think he was looking for a fight, perhaps against upper weight class. But who knows? Yeah. So, how does Kaue win? He stays at range. He doesn't let Harry get close. He doesn't get trapped against the fence. Kaue doesn't work well against the fence. He really doesn't. He's really quite worried against the fence. He'll fake a big right hand. That's literally all he does against the fence. And I think if this is gonna get to it, it's just not gonna work well for him. I think he wins by blasting the leg kicks and being able to land like a straight right off Harry's exit. It's sort of how George, his brother, lost his Cage Warriors title fight against Samuel Silva, a win that has not aged well because Silva just got knocked the fuck out on the Contender Series this week, hella quick. By the way, that right hand from Nalo was that was some movie shit, that shit was so efficient. Anyway, I think that's something he needs to be worried about because the chin is open, the lead hand isn't really much guarding, but he's really reliant on his ability to take angles as he gets out and his range management. And I think ultimately uh, that could be the way Kaue hurts him, knocks him down. Last thing I think he might be able to do is use his size, and Kaue likes to get body lock takedown, so he grabs over double unders, or he like grabs a body lock and he works for inside outside trips, or he just simply just changes the angle and you just sags his way forward and you fall down. I don't think that's gonna work. I think George has had, his last fight was against a good grappler who works really well against the clinch. I know he was getting defense a lot of times, and I know he's a guy who doesn't settle. Unlike Kaue, Kaue will settle. George will immediately look to get up. It's really JDM-esque, to be honest. But yeah, I think Kaue wins blasting leg kicks and that right straight that he's been kind of throwing, but hasn't really done so with great efficiency. Might be the money shot. I think George wins by simply working his game. Not George, Harry. Shit. Harry wins by simply working his game, pressuring this guy, getting him back against the fence, and just landing body shots. Being willing to take one to give 2, 3, 4, which he does quite a bit. Keeping that chin tucked and that left hand just up a little bit more than he normally does, and just literally watching that lead head kick off the disengage. Kaue has a highly real knockout with this. He dropped Kaue with this, and I think ultimately that's how Harry wins. I think I'm going to predict a second or third round body shot TKO victory from Harry Hardwick. So, yeah, that's all. I guess we'll find out how it goes. Yeah, thanks.